This is Singapore. With a life expectancy on average of around 84, it is often ranked as one of the healthiest cities in the world. And not just this, it is one of the richest, with economic output per person being one of the highest globally. From the outside looking in, this suggests a certain kind of lifestyle. Long, comfortable, orderly. But we wanted to investigate what health really looks like in a city that seems to have it all. So this is the true cost of living in Singapore. I'm Leah, an online coach, and I spend a lot of my time thinking about what it actually takes for people to be healthy. Over the last few years, I've spent a lot of time traveling. In this time, I've seen different places and cultures and how this has navigated the way that people live, move, and eat. Of course, Singapore kept coming up. It is often described as a gold standard because a country that has a life expectancy of 84 doesn't really get there by accident. So we'll start with the first quote-unquote rule of health, which is of course movement. Movement is the closest thing that health has to a non-negotiable. It reduces all-cause mortality, literally the risk of dying from anything, by a stupid amount. And every long-living population on Earth has this in common. They make daily movement part of everyday life, and Singapore makes it practically unavoidable. Now, you will hear me rave about the streets of Singapore very soon, but there is one initiative that you need to know about that makes Singapore so special, and that is ActiveSG. A government-funded network of gyms, pools and sports centres spread across the whole city, designed to make movement and exercise genuinely affordable and accessible. So of course, we had to go check it out.
We're on our way to ActiveSG. The whole place is so walkable. It's ridiculous. There's no bits where you hit road and there's no pavement. Everywhere's got traffic lights and well, it's not even a zebra crossing because it's not stripy, but a crossing that tells you how long is left before the lights change. You've got these little bits of coverage around like the bus stops and the MRT lines, which if it rains means you're not getting piss wet through. Like everything is designed for the efficiency of being able to walk.
On the way to ActiveSG, we got a little distracted, but that is no surprise. We kept seeing park after park and eventually decided to stop in one. There was people of all ages there, including this lovely woman that decided to show me her favourite exercise. It was clean, well looked after, and of course, looked like it was made to be used. Health infrastructure here doesn't really announce itself. It blends in and you kind of just stumble over it.
This is incredible. Like, truly. For anyone that knows Manchester, especially anyone who grew up around Salford, Little Hulton area, there's this park called Peel Park and Parfold Park, and they both have outdoor gyms, and both of them have been absolutely ruined. If I can find any pictures, I will insert them here. In the arms of the... And if you then compare it to the outdoor park in Singapore, everything's clean, there's no graffiti anywhere. It's, again, pushing the fact that the government have tried to integrate fitness in the most accessible way possible. Are you gonna become the next CBum in these parks? No. Does it at least give you the access to physical movement and not just in the form of walking? You've got public spaces like this that are well maintained, that are clean, that people can work out in and kind of do more calisthenics based training, but still training that you can do in order to build muscle.
Before we get back to our journey to ActiveSG, we want to zoom out for a bit and get the perspective from somebody else in Singapore's health and fitness space, because we all know I can chat for England, but probably be interesting to get someone else's point of view. So this is Eka.
I'm a personal trainer, group fitness instructor, supplement salesperson, and sports nutritionist.
As you can see, Eka has a lot of knowledge and experience. She currently works at Elite Supplements, one of the first performance-based supplement stores in Singapore. But more than just the qualifications she has to back her, she speaks to customers day in, day out. She sees what they're training for, what they need, what they're buying, and what they're missing.
How accessible do you think fitness is?
I've got notes about this one. The government does push health programs, so there is ActiveSG. That one is good for locals because it is a very cheap option. However, I've heard some things from locals is that it's a bit crowded sometimes and the machines are always broken.
After about an hour of fucking about in the park and mean testing equipment, of course, we continued our walk to ActiveSG. Like I said, ActiveSG is a government-funded initiative designed to make fitness and movement as accessible as possible all across Singapore. But what I didn't mention was the scale. Launched in 2014 as a national movement, it now has hundreds of thousands of active users all across Singapore. In the first quarter of 2025 alone, nearly 400,000 people used ActiveSG's facilities and programs, and we're about to add to those numbers. Well, try at least.
Hello.
Hey,
Can we buy day pass?
yes, we have a towel.
Towel?
Yeah. Oh, actually, you need to have.
Need to have a towel.
Correct.
Oh. Okay, another side quest. We're gonna go buy towels. Oh, why? Oh, towel. 2 for $3. Thank you so much. Towels acquired.
Say that again.
No photo and no video.
So they do not let any sort of cameras or filming. So we'll report back.
That was horrible. There was hardly any of the machines
Do you get that?
working. There was like 5 of them that were out of order.
Yeah.
The guy
It's a
would
shame.
not stop staring and walking
No,
past
we were monitored there.
and
for sure.
checking. Like we was in and out in half an hour, and I'm a bit sad. I really wanted to walk away and be like,
Yeah,
wow,
that was amazing.
They've really. Of course, it's a low budget gym. There's only so much you can do when you're paying like £1.50, £1.70 to get in.
It seems as if that is the only option if you're not earning a shit ton of money. Like the gym closest to us, which seemed to have a moderate price apparently, was $38
$38 for a day pass.
Now, Echo gave us the lowdown on gym expenses, and it is safe to say it was anything but pretty.
Price of gyms here was the most shocking thing to me. I came here, the cheapest gym I could find was $98 a month. So that's what I pay right now for my gym.
98.
Yep. Typically a gym will cost you around like $200 a month. Yeah,
On
like
average.
150 to 200
Wow.
on average. And then the higher end gyms will be like 300.
I think creating that like gym culture and that gym feeling, I'm sure you probably get when you're spending $20 a month.
Yes.
But that's not accessible.
Which seems to be like the going rate for a monthly pass of anything that isn't a government funded gym.
ActiveSG does what it promises. It makes structured exercise affordable. It makes movement a part of the public system, and the intent is obvious, but it is also a budget gym. Most of the equipment is worn and many pieces were broken. The pool was also closed, which was a bit of a bummer, and the vibe was pretty dead. So it is a complicated one because on one hand, it's a real opportunity, especially for someone just starting out, but on the other hand, even cheap still costs money. Money that could be spent on food, rent, or transport. ActiveSG lowers the barrier, but it still doesn't remove it, and that's kind of the pattern we're starting to see. Movement here is easy to design, everything else around training is harder. So after a full day of filming, walking and realising we were completely fucked, we headed back to our short-term home, which was a little capsule hotel. Beautifully functional, private showers and free coffee. It wasn't very good, but it was free, so I was taking it. And realistically, the only place that we could actually afford. Here's our bed. She was really comfortable, but don't worry, this was actually filmed in the morning. We definitely did not get into our bed with worn gym clothes. That is fucking disgusting. But the cameraman is also the editor and needed to show the travesty that she endured behind the scenes. Wait, I didn't write this. That was funny. That was funny, girl.
Here's Johnny.
Yes, dark.
The next morning, we headed back out. Movement here is easy to spot and even easier to join in on. Have I mentioned I fucking love a good walk? But health isn't just movement. It happens after work, after the walk, after the long shift. It's what you eat. And that is where things start to look a little different. Our first stop was 7-Eleven because, well, they're everywhere. They're convenient, fast, and open when nothing else is. And I know you've probably heard about 7-Eleven, but indulge me because you need to understand their dominance. 7-Eleven is one of the most successful retail models ever built. It started as a single ice store in the US and of course expanded and had its real rise in Asia. Today, its strongest presence is across countries like Japan, Taiwan, Thailand, and Singapore, which has one of the highest numbers of 7-Eleven per person across the world. Globally, convenience retail is one of the fastest growing parts of the food industry, especially in dense cities, which makes it a pretty good place to see what everyday food access actually looks like. And as an entity, it taps into one of our biggest human instincts: convenience. The cheapest options are ultra-processed, high in sugar, high in salt, and of course have the longest shelf life, which isn't surprising. It's 7-Eleven. But the things that people usually associate with eating well, fresh foods, high protein, high fiber, they cost substantially more.
I can't drop that much on a fucking protein. Oh my god, they've got me for. They've got it, but that's daylight robbery. That.
How much?
$5.90. $5.90. Oh my god, I'm so happy that they exist though. I might have to check this out. I'm shocked. They're 16 grams. 16 grams. That's the protein.
It's just because it's a bit of fun, that's all.
Well, after spending a small fortune, we headed to Singapore's largest supermarket chain, FairPrice. It was started in the 1970s by the Labour movement. At the time, Singapore was dealing with a global oil crisis,
We're in an energy crisis now and will be for some time to come.
so there were fears of food shortages. Prices were rising, some merchants were increasing the cost of essentials, so Fair Price was created to stabilise prices, to sell food at a reasonable cost, and to become, in their words, the people's supermarket. Essentially, this is where families shop, where weekly food comes from, and it is meant to be a middle-tier shop. 7-Eleven shows us what it looks like when you're in a rush. Fair Price, I suppose, shows what it looks like when you've got a plan. And this is where things get interesting.
Melon. Well, that's about £3 for 5 slices. Fresh sushi. I would expect something like this to be expensive anywhere, but for sashimi, that's not surprising. What about proteins though? Chicken. Single chicken breast there, $3.84. Red meat, we've got beef. Stir-fried beef, $5.35. Pork's even more expensive. This was $7.34. The main consensus being lean proteins especially just are not very accessible. You can get a lot of like chicken thighs, chicken wings, chicken legs at hawker centres. A lot of the time they've been deep fried or cooked with oil, marinated in things that aren't the lowest of calories and leanest in terms of if people eat these things every day when they are accessible. Obviously it's going to lead to weight gain if they are not exercising and spending the calories that they're consuming. One thing that really did shock me is the price of yogurt. Again, accepting the fact that they import all of their dairy, but the price of yogurt for a girlie that loves a yogurt bowl was a sight for sore eyes, to say the least.
I really do love a yogurt bowl, but this yogurt was really fucking expensive. And it's kind of a perfect example of what's going on. The story starts long before supermarkets existed. It starts with how the country was built. When Singapore became independent in 1965, it had just separated from Malaysia after political and ethnic tensions made the union unstable. What remained was this tiny, overcrowded island that had no independent resources, no oil, no farmland, and no independent water supply. Unemployment was high, housing shortages were severe, and organised crime and drug trafficking was rife across the ports of Southeast Asia, and Singapore was no exception. So, yeah, failure was a real possibility. The leaders who took over, most famously Lee Kuan Yew and the People's Action Party, came to a pretty blunt conclusion. Singapore couldn't survive by producing things. It would have to survive by organising them. So instead of trying to be self-sufficient, it made sure it became indispensable. Not a nation built on resources, but a nation built on systems, ports, manufacturing, financing, logistics, and later technology and biotech. And the message to the population was clear. Economy growth wasn't just prosperity, it was survival. In 20 years, income per person rose more than 14 times, one of the fastest economic transformations in history. But the model came with a permanent trade-off. To grow this way, Singapore accepted dependence. Local small businesses were never the main foundation for economy early on. Stability came from foreign firms, global supply chains, and international demand. Today, over 90% of Singapore's food is imported. Vegetables from Malaysia, rice from Thailand and India, beef from Australia. So why is food still expensive, even in one of the world's greatest trading hubs? Because influence doesn't erase geography. Food still has to be grown elsewhere, shipped across oceans, inspected, insured, and paid for at global market prices. Singapore negotiates excellent trade deals to reduce taxes and friction, but it cannot control weather, fuel costs, global demand, or international currency shifts.
Ports halting some oil exports.
Yemen's Houthis have launched a missile attack.
Joint military strike with Israel.
A nuclear catastrophe in the making.
If enough money, cargo, contracts, and companies depend on Singapore, then the world has a reason to keep it stable. And it worked. But it also means everyday life here is permanently connected to forces far beyond the island. Young Singaporeans continue to talk about living paycheck to paycheck, about needing degrees just to reach stability, about housing being so expensive that moving out of their parents' house feels unrealistic, about inequality quietly growing while the city continues to look flawless from the outside. Singapore became one of the most efficient economies in human history, but efficiency builds strong systems, not cheap lives. Enough of this beautiful segue, we need to get back to shopping.
So the price of like green, like leafier vegetables, like pak choy, isn't bad. You get 3 packs of them for $1.80, which is about £1. But as soon as you go on to berries,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, $7.48 for 200 grams of blueberries.
Ultimately, do you think fair price is fair?
I mean, it's a bit of a hard one because like the person in me that loves a bargain, loves a good cheap deal, says no, it's not. If you're thinking about the economy and the price of importation and stuff like that, maybe is as good of a answer I can give you. Like things that'll last longer on the shelf, aren't high in protein, are a little bit more processed. Are accessible in terms of like these are about £1, which is very similar to back home. But as soon as you get into the fresh produce, the protein, quote unquote, the whole foods, the things that are good for you, that is when the problem kind of comes in when it comes to the price of things.
Fair price does what it can, and it exists to keep everyday food within reach. But in a city that imports almost everything, even the national supermarket becomes a bit of a compromise. And unfortunately, the locals feel the weight of these rising prices first. After walking the aisles and not eating a thing, we were fucking starving. So we headed somewhere more local, the hawker stalls, with the goal of having one dish and one dish only that had been recommended to us, not just by the locals, but tourists and gym bros alike.
So we are off to get some chicken and rice. It seems to be the thing that anyone gym related has been like, that is the go-to meal. You get chicken rice. You can customize it a little bit if you want in terms of getting a set meal and getting some pak choy or something in there in order to like add a little bit of micronutrients to it. But we're gonna go give it a test and see how good it really is. I say we, she's here.
I love chicken rice.
I mentioned them before, but let me tell you a little bit more about how they came to be. They didn't start as food culture. In fact, they started as a problem. In the early days of the city, thousands of street vendors sold food wherever there was space. Sidewalks, alleys, roadsides, and they just had one objective, and that was to meet the main criteria of food being affordable. It was cheap, it was fast, it was tasty, but with that kind of demand, things escalated quickly. Stores became crowded, unregulated, and often unsafe. So in the 1960s and 70s, the government had to step in. Vendors were moved into purpose-built centres, licenses were issued, and hygiene standards were enforced. Any change like that, especially one that reshapes how people earn a living, wouldn't have been easy. But over time, something really interesting happened, because street food didn't just disappear, it morphed into Singapore's everyday infrastructure. And today, hawker centres are everywhere, located in every corner of the city. And for a lot of people, this is the most realistic version of eating out. It's reliable, much cheaper than the restaurant counterparts, and quite frankly, just really fucking delicious.
Hello, can I have the £7 set? She's a hater. Yeah. She's an actual hater. Oh. So all of this cost $7 Singaporean dollars, which I think is equivalent to about £4.
That's not bad.
No. Got a bit of everything. We've got a bit of chicken, a bit of onion, pak choy, rice. You know what? This is brilliant. This is really, really nice. That is incredible. Wow. On the stalls that we've been going around, especially on the one with the chicken rice, you can see that on some of the things it says like lower in calories, and there's stickers on the tables that are talking about like being measured with your plate. So it's clear that they are evidently aware, and like the government are pushing for people to have a greater understanding about the foods that they're eating. The only sort of like micronutrients you're really getting from like veg and stuff is the pak choy, but it's better than nothing.
On paper, it's one of the healthiest cities in the world. Part of that comes down to its health-orientated design, some of it down to its smaller, more tightly managed population, as well as the nation's identity to want to grow and become their best selves. But what we had noticed from the conversation that we were having was that there was still a lack of person-to-person knowledge around what health really was. Because all the health that we'd been seeing and the little bit of knowledge that people did have, we realised wasn't there from an autonomous seek of education, but what had been provided to them from the government. And on the topic of government-supported education, in a lot of the food courts and hawker stalls, there was the My Plate guide on the table. A big sticker slapped right in the middle to provide a nice, simple visual representation of what nutrition should look like, what their plate should look like in order for it to be balanced. And it actually has had a positive effect. Reviews from the programme show that when people understand their food better, they, shock horror, make better decisions, particularly around the macros that they consume. And they'll soon be rolling out further Nutrigrade labelling measures in 2027 to keep pushing numbers back down, which further highlights something important. Even in a city designed for health, if there is an information or an education gap, this is naturally followed by an implementation gap as well. But health doesn't break down because of one missing piece of the system. It breaks down between the gap of knowing and doing. Because as we are all probably well aware at this point, those things are very different. And this gap doesn't just exist in Singapore. It exists everywhere. There is a global obesity crisis unfolding in real time, and Singapore, despite everything it's built, isn't immune to it. In the last decade, obesity rates and obesity-related illnesses have steadily climbed. And this isn't because people all of a sudden just stopped caring, but the modern-day food environment changed far faster than human behaviour could, which is why I'm dubbing this third rule the rule of time. So what does the true cost of health in Singapore really look like? Even in one of the healthiest cities on earth, lasting health isn't just about access and infrastructure. It's about combining strong systems and empowered individuals. Because yes, Singapore shows us what can happen when a city truly commits to health, but it also reminds us the systems alone aren't enough. People still have to learn, habits still have to be earned, and actions still need to be implemented. And I think that is the true cost of living in Singapore.